Hey everybody, in landscape mode. That's kind of funny. Didn't remember to change into my good glasses, so you're going to have to deal with glasses with a little bit of paint on them, but that's all right. Anyway, all's well in the world. You know, everybody knows about the time change except the clock in the car. And my phones were in my pocket. I was not paying attention to my phone, and the clock in the car said I had plenty of time to get home. I even stopped at the store, and I come out of the store and my 7:55 alarm goes off, and I'm shocked. So I apologize. It's disrespectful to not be ready on time. It shows that I'm not putting this first in my life, and I'm focusing on it and making it worth something worth your time. And I apologize for that. I have been praying today. I've been working on some things to talk about. And I've got some notes here that I take during the week that I put on my phone right when I think about them. The number one thing is we've got a long way to go and a broken heart in tow. I miss, because I'm hard of hearing, there was a song on the radio. And I thought that's what the song said. Now, when it came around to that verse again, it didn't say that, but it's what I heard. And you have a long way to go with a broken heart in tow. Oh, boy, that describes me most of my life. And I'm not one for long testimonies and telling testimonies over and over again. But there are some testimonies, some parts of my testimony that are an ingredient to what made me what I am, who I am. Now, it also made me who I didn't want to be. You've got to look back to your childhood. You've got to look back to how you were treated. If you would go to pretty much any church service, any big church, if you were to say to anybody in that church,
turn off the Wi-Fi.
Oh, if you were to say to anybody into that whole congregation, how many of you were abused as a child or went through trauma as a child and it's affected your entire life? I'm telling you, almost everyone would raise their hand. Hey, Jimmy, my front row is here even when I'm late. Well, I'll tell you, I appreciate it. I'm not going to hold you long. I need that back. It's got my notes. Because we all did things. Well, the trauma that I went through was even before my family had a chance to put me through it. That's funny to think about it that way. But I was born with pyloric stenosis. That's when your umbilical cord doesn't let you switch over to alimentary canal, which is how you eat. So my stomach did not open up. And of course, when a baby's in a womb, it always basically breathes in and out amniotic fluid, and the stomach fills up and it vomits it back up, and it's just everything stays nice and clean because the baby never poops in its own water in the womb. So when I was born, the stomach is supposed to open and start digesting food, and the other one, the umbilical cord at your has to be shut off because it's cut off when you're born, and your belly button is your proof that you were actually a human being born of a woman. Now, here I am, the first week of my life, and this is according to the testimony of my mother. I got it from her, asking her details before I wanted to testify about it. And, this was like, she's been gone a long time, but we talked about it many years ago. And I began to lose weight the first week, and by the end of the first week, she said, I could see the veins in your skin. I knew something was wrong. We took her to the hospital. It was pyloric stenosis. Now, it was too weak to operate on, so I went and I had to be put on intravenous and separated and left in the hospital. Now, my dad worked at the hospital, so he would visit every day, and there was plenty of nurses and plenty of attention, and but it wasn't family. And because of the stomach thing, the first week of my life, every time I was fed, I threw it up again, because it's the natural tendency of a baby in a womb to throw anything back up that's in its stomach, because it still thinks it's in the womb. So it doesn't want to start the canal. Well, it opened up a little bit, I guess, because I was, having some movement and some some food stay down, but it wasn't enough to work. And so for the second week of my life, I was getting built up and strong enough for surgery, because this is 1959. Remember, this isn't all these invasive surgeries now. I mean, they slice you open. I mean, the scar on my belly is probably this long, but you got to remember that on a baby, that's a huge scar. And it also caused me to not be able to do sit-ups the way everybody else could. They cut a little muscle in there. A little bit of the muscle was cut and damaged so that I couldn't do things that other people could do. It was like, anyway. So I never knew why. No one ever figured that out. So then I am, after that week, then you have the surgery, then you're still fed through a tube. You're still, and which leaves you still hungry. You can ask anybody that has been fed on a tube. You never feel satisfied because your jaw doesn't move. You don't chew anything, and you don't feel like you've eaten anything, so you always feel hungry.
And in a side thing to that, my grandmother went through the Depression, and the lack of food, it was the same thing that Donny has experienced. The lack of food for people that lived through that Depression, they were always panicked.
Harboring.
They would panic when they were hungry.
And they would have way too much food, always stored up, always ready. They would overdo it in a lot of ways because they had been through the Depression. So I was a foodie. That's what makes me a foodie, by the way. When you realize Donny's a foodie, and sometimes he's panicked and sometimes he's hangry. I do fight that. I try not to let my flesh get a hold of me and tell me, oh well, you're dying. There's no food. But honestly, your body doesn't know where food is. It doesn't know what. It just says feed me. It doesn't know what a grocery store is. You have to go into the grocery store, or you have to tell your body, okay, calm down. There's plenty of food. It's just not time to eat yet. You have to talk to your body like a dog. Get down. We're going to eat dinner soon. Get down. Well, I didn't know that as a child. I actually got disciplined quite a bit at a table because of my inability to not gorge myself, my inability to not stuff my face. I ate too fast. My dad would say, you eat like a dog, you eat like a wolf. You're wolfing your food. Stop it. Chew your food. You're wolfing your food. They never dawned on my parents. I don't know how. My dad working in the hospital and my mother going through everything that they saw me go through, never dawned on them that I ate like a wolf, and I was doing all of that because of that fear of the first 3 weeks of my life. Because I was born May 29th, and I didn't eat until June 21st and actually keep a full meal down. At least that's the testimony of my mother. And it wasn't over then, because my sister said that later on, she says my sister remembers me sitting in a high chair and vomiting, which of course a newborn baby couldn't do. So, it may have been a little bit older too, that I may have had some kind of issue or whatever. But that's not as clear. Oh, she's able, that's her version. Being 12 years old at the time, she would know, what she saw. Anyway, between the two stories, I kind of gleaned all of this. And so the reason I'm bringing this up, not only to say how I have to talk to my flesh, my body, and say, it's okay. There's plenty of food. Don't worry about it. It's all right. I have that kind of thing is that, I guess, part of that made me a foodie, made me a cook too, because I was not happy unless I was in a kitchen. When I was in the kitchen and I was around food, I was a normal person. But if I had to wait for a meal and things had to wait, I did not do well. And so it's in the Coast Guard, in my, I think, second year in the Coast Guard, 77, 78, 79, 79, I became a cook. And I was happy ever since. And so I remained a cook until I got out in 91. And I just loved that job. Just took care of my crew, took care of my boys, loved to cook every day.
And he knew he could eat whenever he needed.
And I knew I could eat whatever I needed. And there was a time when I started gaining weight, and that's when the Lord first showed me, not long after I had known the Lord and gotten born again, that I was overweight. I was almost 220 pounds, 225 pounds. And the Coast Guard said, you're too fat, we're going to kick you out unless you go down, unless you lose 20 pounds. And so in my prayer time, I was like, I don't know what to do. And the Lord said to me, come against the fear of hunger. And so I said, I'm not afraid to be hungry. I am not afraid to be hungry. I said, okay, I can be hungry. And that was like the first step of getting myself out from underneath my flesh being in charge. Because when you're born, your flesh is in charge. Your body has all the natural instincts to get fed, changed, cleaned, loved, and everything is already built into you with just one word. Wham! That's all you have to do when you're first born. And as you learn the English language and progress, you learn how to say what you want and how to get what you want. And that's what's nice about the your food's ready. About the Jewish tradition of the bar mitzvah is that they consider manhood something that happens, you train for from 12 to 13, and at 13 you have a bar mitzvah where you are separated from your mother. And I want to give you the greatest piece of advice that I got from that teaching that I did, was that you switch from your mother being an ATM to a bank. And you switch from you, and for you older guys, don't treat your wife like an ATM like you did your mother. She's a bank. You give her one sperm cell, she will give you an entire baby. You give her money, you give her land, you give her whatever, she will incubate it, increase it, and do much good with it. And and I'm bringing that up because Proverbs 14. We're going to segue right into that. And if you will remember that your wife is a bank, and what you put in, you get interest. Oh, my wife's ignoring me. Well, you haven't given her anything, and therefore she is giving you no interest. If my wife has no interest in me, then that's because I have sown nothing into her.
And on that line, we found out, because I was watching this menopause doctor, and she's one of the leading authorities on menopause, and she and one of the other doctors that she follows talks about it as well, and saying that a woman's brain changes.
What was that thing about a man's brain and a woman's brain?
A woman's brain literally changes during menopause, and for a lot of women, it starts early. It actually starts early. They can start in their 40s. And then
you thought it was just a week you were going to have to put up with.
By around 50, they can be in full menopause. Mm-hmm. When they've had 1 year without a cycle, they are full menopause at that point, and everything can change. You can go ahead and look at, while I'm saying this, look at your notes.
That's what I'm doing. I'm looking.
Everything can change. And so this doctor who's teaching all this, and the women, they go through pain, inflammation, they get brain fog, all kinds of things, and then what happens is, they get to the point where they feel like sometimes they have to take care of themselves. And that doctor, her best friend is a divorce lawyer. And after the divorce lawyer, she's listening to her best friend teach on this menopause thing. And she said to her doctor friend, she goes, I have come to the conclusion that most older ladies that deal with divorce, and they all of a sudden, if they bring it on, if the husband brings it on, it might be a different thing, but it still could be, because the ladies, they change, and when they change and their brain changes and their attitude, and they get moody and all this stuff,
had enough of that man,
a divorce ensues. And that's what this divorce lawyer said. Older women, she says, I believe it's menopause that's causing them to do this. So when Donny's saying, invest in your wife, because if she's having menopause symptoms, invest in her emotions.
Your whole life.
Invest in her.
So that when it comes to
figure it out, because, and they're saying that all the stuff about hormone replacement, there's a lot of it is completely wrong, that women actually need hormone replacement, but they need the right kind. They need the right kind of hormone replacement, because the old studies are wrong to just say nothing.
More of this, more of that.
And so hormone replacement for your wife can bring her back to her mind. It can take her inflammation pain away. It can take her mood swings away. It can do all these things for her, and stuff. And that's where Donnie's saying, take care of your wife, invest in your wife, read her signs, and we'll put a link in the description.
Let's do that.
We'll put a link in the description to this doctor who's teaching this, and you can listen to it for yourself, whether you're a female or a male or whatever, that has a spouse dealing with this, or if you're dealing with this, and you can look at her information and what she teaches. And that could save a marriage, because I have a friend that his wife in the older years she's gone. She left him, and he's just constantly lonely and sad and feeling abandoned, And I feel like his wife probably went through that. She probably went through her menopause, and she was like, I'm done. I have to take care of myself. And that's the thing. That's what they start feeling like. Nobody's taking care of me. I have to take care of me. And they stop. Literally, their brain tells them to stop taking care of everyone else, and that they need to take care of themselves. That's what's happening in their brain. So Donnie's going to read Proverbs now.
Okay, I don't have to type this in because I can just tell you real quick now. Many times in my life, especially in the military and other places, I saw something called feel sorry for your love. Gentlemen, you better make sure that your wife loves you because she loves you, because you're a wonderful man and a provider and a good husband and a good dad and all of these things. If she loves you just because she feels sorry for you, if she married you just because she felt sorry for you, you will have a hard time making it through that point in menopause when she says, okay, I've had enough of this. I've never loved you. I've only felt sorry for you. And now I need to find somebody that I'm in love with. I need to go find someone in love with.
And sometimes they don't find anyone. They don't even want to.
They just go to one of those retirement villages in Florida with all the other short-haired women and just have a wonderful life, because they just don't need that anymore. They've given themselves out. Joy said, I've just given myself out for so many years. I'm done with that. I've put up with so much for so many years and just give and poured myself into so many people, and they were mostly users, and then boom, I'm done. I've had it. And I think that's kind of what's going on with, in another translation of that. So gentlemen, make sure your wife, how you treat her and you love her, that she's in love with you. Because if she's in love with you, you'll make it through menopause. I thought menopause was going to be a couple of weeks. I was okay. Then it was turning into months. Now my wife tells me it's basically the rest of her life, that she will have to work with this and deal with this. And okay, but I don't sit there and go, oh, gee, I thought this, or oh, I want this, or oh, this. Nope, that's not what it's about. What it's about is that there are times in your life when you're in love with your wife, and there are times in your life where your wife is your assignment. Your assignment from God to take care of. Your assignment from God to be patient with. Your assignment from God to be, what if, no matter what you did wrong in your life, if you die married to that woman, God's going to say, well done, good and faithful servant, because you were able to stay married. Because you were able to stay, you kept it together. What if that's all it took to get well done, good and faithful servant? And you might even say, you got to live with that woman, but every woman has that woman moment in their life. They're not all sweet and roses all the time. But overall, the greatest marriages are made of two people that keep each other good company. We are good company. She has her thing, I have my thing, but when we go out together, we are good company. We have fun. We do a lot together. We don't rarely watch the same thing at home, And I used to wonder about that, and people would say, "Oh, you're growing apart." No, not at all, not at all. Especially Asperger's, totally different. For me, as a matter of fact, with my independence and my narcissism that I came out of, I wanted my quiet time. I wanted my own time. I wasn't interested in entertaining her every moment and keeping her happy with, "Oh, where are you, Snookums? I miss you. You need to be here with me." And she wasn't like that, and I didn't want to be that. So it worked out great. So this is why we go to Proverbs 14. Today's the 14th, and wouldn't you know, verse 1, the wise woman, the wise woman builds her house. The foolish one pulls it down with her own hands. Verse 2, he who walks in the uprightness fears the Lord, but he who is perverse in his ways despises him. In the mouth of a fool is the rod of pride, but the lips of the wise will preserve them. Where no oxen are, the trough or the crib is clean, but much increase comes by the strength of an ox. I use this one on my wife. Whenever I break something, whenever I leave a mess, whenever she's a little bit discouraged about what a mess it is outside, and I can't even film out here because it's so trashy. I say, well, much work is done by an ox. I have an excuse. It's not a good excuse. I admit it's not a good excuse, but it's an excuse. And because I get a lot done, and I bring in, an income. Next verse, a faithful witness does not lie, but a false witness will utter them. A scoffer seeks wisdom and does not find it. Now, I was a scoffer at one point. And what a scoffer does is he asks you a question, but he already knows the answer. He's not asking you because he wants your version of the answer. He already knows the answer. He just wants you to confirm his version, or you're wrong, or agree with him. That's scoffing. What do you know? And I went and one day when I was like, God, why aren't you answering my prayers? He said, well, you can come to me and you can ask questions about my word. But remember, when you do, no, you're wrong. And after that, I started getting all the answers I wanted. Because every time I asked a question, I would not already have the answer in my head. I would say, Lord, I know I'm wrong about this, but what is going on with Abraham right now? Or what is going on with, Lot and his family? And I wouldn't try to guess what he was going to say. I wouldn't try to imagine what his answer was going to be. I would just say, Lord, I have a question for you. And all of a sudden, answers started coming because I wasn't scoffing. But knowledge is easy to him who understands. Yep. Go from the presence of a foolish man. As soon as you perceive in him, he thinks he has lips of knowledge, I think is what it's trying to say. Go from the foolish man when you do not perceive he has lips of knowledge. What a way of putting that. I'm sorry. I'm not calling you a fool. I'm just saying your lips don't have knowledge. I'm sorry. I didn't call you a liar. I just, according to my First Amendment rights, decided not to believe you. The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his own way. The folly of fools is deceit. Fools mock at sin, but among the upright there is favor. Verse 10, the heart knows its own bitterness, and a stranger does not share its joy. That's basically saying your heart is hidden. Not only can no one know how bitter it is, they also cannot know how joyful it is. You've got to express yourself and get help if you're bitter so that you can get better, or share the joy so they can be joyful too. The house of the wicked will be overthrown, but the tent of the upright will flourish. Now, I did a study on this, and very interesting, those two words, house and tent. The house is not just a building. It is a legacy. The house, remember Ben-Hur, the house of Hur. The house back then was an entire lineage, not just one building or one home, but parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, all of these generations, all that they produced, all the land that they had, all the children that they had, that was considered a house. And so that's what's talking about, that even as great as it might be, it will be overthrown. So but yet the tent of the upright will flourish, and a tent, a temporary dwelling. And that's us. We're just temporarily here on the earth. Will be able to flourish. There is a way that seems right to a man, but it ends in the way of death. Even in laughter, the heart may sorrow. The end of mirth may be grief. I know you've seen people go, I used to do that years ago, because I was two people. The backslider in heart will be filled with his own ways, but the good man will be satisfied from above. This is in my Bible under top 10 pieces of advice, and that is, he who surrounds himself with himself ends up alone, but he who surrounds himself with others shall a family be. The simple believes every word, but the prudent considers well his steps. A wise man fears and departs from evil, but a fool rages in self-confidence. A quick-tempered man acts foolishly, and a man of wicked intention is hated. The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. So this is, I want to say, this is something about the courtrooms that I'm going to say here in a minute. The simple inherit folly. Okay, so that inheritance means it's coming from your bloodline. It's coming from your parents. It's coming from your family. It is something that you have to be aware of. So the ignorance of your parents with their finances is also your ignorance with your finances if you don't change your ways. Your ignorance of your parents doesn't mean just foolishness. It means simple, very, not trying to be educated, not trying to be, whatever my daddy did, that's what I do too. My daddy drank all this kind of, I'm going to drink some too, So you inherit it from, above. So you have to stop that. I've got a swollen tongue from biting it or something here and making me sound funny. A quick-tempered man acts foolishly. A man with wicked intentions is hated. But the prudent are crowned with knowledge. The evil will bow before the good, and the wicked at the gates of righteousness. The poor man is hated, even by his own neighbor. But the rich has many friends. He who despises his neighbors is in sin, but he who has mercy on the poor, happy is he. Do they not go astray who devise evil? But mercy and truth belong to those who devise good. All in all labor there is profit, but idle chatter leads only to poverty. The crown of the wise is their riches, but the foolishness of fools is folly. A true witness desires and delivers souls, but the deceitful witness speaks lies. In fear of the Lord there is strong confidence, and his children will have a place of refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life. Turn away, and you will find the snares of death. In a multitude of people, a king's honor, but the lack of people is his downfall. He who is slow to wrath has great understanding, but he who is impulsive exalts folly. Yeah, be slow to anger. Don't get mad at me real quick. Take your time. Don't get mad at your family, your friends. Take your time. Get mad at them over time, especially your children. I would say there was a couple times that my parents disciplined me and they weren't angry at the time. It was a very, a little bit of a courtroom, a little bit of an explanation, and then a good long spanking. Other times it was kind of reactionary, but I appreciated that my parents were able to talk a little bit, understand, because, every kid wants to know, what did I do? What did I do? Because honestly, a lot of times ADD kids don't know what they did. The wicked is banished in his wickedness, but the righteous has refuge in his death. I wonder if that means the righteous has refuge in his death, talking about his death, or is it talking about the death of the wicked? Wisdom rests in the heart of him who has understanding. 3 more. But what has the heart? But what is in the heart of a fool? It is made known. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Last verse. The king's favor is towards the wise servant, but his wrath is against him who causes shame. Pretty good for the 14th, huh?
Spaceman noticed the birds in the background. I had it on the TV and forgot to turn it off. And
You could hear the chirping, you mean?
he goes, "Do I hear birds?" Spaceman said, "Do I hear birds?"
Well, I'll tell you, that SMR today, following her, was so funny. And when she did the out and back, that was so romantic. It was like, "Come to me, my love. Come to me, my love." I just was fall in love with her when I saw that. She held her hand out to me like, "Come to me." And I came. I wanted to kiss the camera. So, like I said at the beginning.
So if you haven't watched that video, it's over on Smoky Mountain Blast, where I walked around the campground and the birds were chirping, and I showed the little mountain creeks and everything, and the flowers that were blooming right now and things like that. So if you haven't watched that video, please go over there and watch it when you get a chance.
Okay.
Go click on it and hit play later or watch later. And then it'll come back up in your feed, and you'll be able to watch it.
I know. There are so many times I'm in my worship time, and I have to scroll through things to get to the right one that I want to listen to. And I pass by so many things that I go, "Oh, I want to see that later. I want to go back." I never find them again.
You have to actually click on it and hit watch later, and it'll come back to you in your feed.
Even if you just touch on it for a second, it puts it in your history. So that's if you don't have time for that. But yeah, you got to hit that.
Yeah.
So do that for us. Thank you. Now, we're going to end it with this. All right, so this is what the Lord dealt with me, and I had notes on for this week. And it has to do with courts of heaven. It has to do with the teachings I've been listening to. And it's not a big thing. It's just a quick little paragraph that says, changing the zoning law of prayer. Isn't that interesting? It was like, because I said, "Lord, what's going on here? What are you trying to show me?" And he's basically said to me, change the zoning law. That's all he said, change the zoning law. So what was going on was, this is an example of how people get around things in the courts. When people don't understand that God has the courts of heaven for a reason. You're supposed to be healed, but you're not. Well, there's a reason that you have to go to court to find out why you're not healed. Why things aren't right. And a lot of times it's trauma, it's things you went through as a child. That's why I started with my testimony. I said that lack of food at the beginning of my life affected my whole life. But what if I'd have been, had it traumatized, not that I never was. I mean, I was traumatized a little bit by a neighbor when I was very young. And, but that was kind of blocked out from my mind for many years. I don't know how much effect that had on me. But I did have trouble with lust and all these things many, many years of my life. And so maybe that was part of that trauma, being traumatized as a child by a neighbor. And but then again, I was also involved with other things that I was voluntarily involved with, and especially when I was like a year or so later. So it must have sowed a seed into me to get involved with even more sensuality and lustful things when you're 6 or 7 years old. That isn't right. I mean, you shouldn't do that kind of stuff. But I was already involved by that time, 7 and 8 years old. And there's a long testimony history about that too. But anyway, getting free from that, even though I got born again and even though I got changed in my mind, I had to cut off that connection to my own trauma in my childhood and to my parents and their issues, because my parents had issues that were working in me. Because they were in me, I didn't understand that I had to cut myself off from them in order to not be bothered by what was their issue on top of my own. And so you're having an issue with finding out how to change things. Well, the way this started out was God said, well, change the zoning law. Change the zoning law. And then, wouldn't you know, I heard a testimony about this lady. She's a preacher, and she was having trouble buying some land, and I won't say it was the direct neighbor, but nearby neighbors, not the neighbor next door who knew her and loved her, but the other neighbors were complaining about it, saying, no, you can't build this extra building on your property. You can't do this extra thing. You can't have more parking. You can't have your meetings here on your private property. This is private property. And according to the zoning law and all of that, they were right. She could not have a parking lot over so many square feet with so many spaces in it. She could not have more septic and more what do you call it, septic, bathrooms, parking spaces, things like that, to accommodate more people because of the zoning law. Well, so instead of trying, so she, she was doing the first things of petitioning her neighbors, saying, could I please do this? Could I please, would you allow me to go ahead and do this, and sign this petition? She went to her neighbors, signed the petition so I can have all these things. And they were like, no, you cannot do this. We're not going to do that. So someone told her, well, you need to go change the zoning law then. Because if the zoning law says you can do it, you don't need your neighbor's permission. So that's what she did. She went to court and she found out that she could change the zoning law and connect her property to a nearby property that was already zoned that way. And then she could change her property to that same zoning law and do whatever she wanted. And so it was like, change the zoning law. Sometimes your fight to get things changed in your life is not what you think it is. Sometimes the prayer is not to pray for, my roof's leaking, I need a new roof. Maybe your prayer is, this is another problem with this house, I need a new house. You can solve your problems sometimes by getting a new house or another car. If you I remember a good testimony when I bought a 1-year-old vehicle, low mileages, like 26,000 miles on it, hardly any miles on it, but I was paying $400 a month for it, and this is back in the late 90s or 2000. And but when I took the fact that I was making $200 to $300 a day, and I was working 20 to 25 days a month. So that means if my vehicle was older and in the shop for 2 days a month, every month there was something going wrong with it or something like that, every 2 days in the month or something like that, that would cost me the same as my car payment. I would be paying a car payment in lost income if I had an older beat-up vehicle. Oh yeah, no payment, but yet I'm paying more to have it fixed all the time, and trouble, even if it doesn't start, and I'm late to the job or anything else like that.
9:07.
We're running. Short. So I just want to say, there are ways to pray about that, and like you're a business trying to build a business in a residential neighborhood, you can't get them to do it. You can't do it for legal reasons, so you stop. And you start to pray for the zone. So praying for the zone you're in, not just praying for your immediate needs. Pray for your neighborhood, pray for your neighbors, pray for the zone that you're in, that it's a blessing zone. Because if you've got neighbors that are bad, if you've got neighbors that have issues, it's going to try to bleed over on you. So you need to pray for your neighbors and your properties and your lands all around you, and change the level of where you are, in this world. Even if it means to move or something like that, because we're believing for land, we're believing to move up, and it's like, wow, it's a fight, and God's going to have to do it, because we aren't going to be able to do it. We aren't going to be able to do it, but God can be able to do it. It's going to be awesome. So thank you for tuning in with me, a little bit late, and staying along. Have a wonderful night. I love you so much. Thank you. And I promise to be respectful of Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. And if I can't be, or if it turns out that I'm not supposed to be, I will let you know. And we'll phase this out into something else. But I like it. I hope to be with you always on this night, or at least doing this with you. I appreciate you. Love you much. Remember, we love you, but Jesus loves you more.
And we might do a pop-up tomorrow on Smoky Mountain Blessed at the Corvette show.
Oh, Corvette Expo is Friday?
Yeah.
Yep.
So Ringy-Dingy and Cousin Eddie are here in town. They don't have any internet where they're at right now, but
thank you, Spaceman.
we should be, they might have to go
Take
out
care.
and get a text message out to me, because sometimes they can't even send a text message where they're at. So
Yep. That must be why that place is inexpensive, why they go there, because it's a good deal. You know? Hey, there's cabins around here that don't even have bathrooms in them. You have to go outside. And I don't mean right outside. I mean there's a bathroom nearby. Okay, good night, good night. Love you much. Where's my end? There it is. Do you want to end this?